Welcome to our continuing series, Questions and Answers for a World in Crisis. Today, we begin a three-part series. The subject is money. Part 1. From the Mother. All money that comes here must be an offering. Money is not meant to make money. Money is meant to make the earth ready for the advent of the new creation. It is to the divine that all riches belong. It is the divine who lends them to living beings, and it is to him that they must naturally return. A day shall come when all the wealth of this world, freed at last from the enslavement to the anti-divine forces, offers itself spontaneously and fully to the service of the divine's work upon earth. Give all you are, all you have. Nothing more is asked of you, but also nothing less. True wealth is that which one offers to the divine. You are rich only by the money that you give to the divine cause. You are richer with the wealth you give than with the wealth you keep in your possession. The true fortune is to spend in the right way. You become truly rich when you dispose of your wealth in the best possible way. Let money come and go in abundance for good works. Disciple. To me, any activity is more important than its cost to me, even if the cost is unreasonable. Money should never be the criterion for such decisions. If we say we can't have something because of its cost, we limit our receptivity to the grace and hamper its workings. Money is only a medium of exchange. It is all relative, and the divine resources are inexhaustible. Is this attitude a correct one? Mother. You are quite right, and I approve of your attitude. Never mix in your thought spiritual power and money, because it leads straight to catastrophe. To the rich, God gives money, but to the poor, he gives himself. All depends on the poor giving more value to the riches or to God. The financiers and businessmen have been offered the possibility to collaborate with the future, but most of them refuse, convinced that the power of money is stronger than that of the future. But the future will crush them with its irresistible power. In this material world, for men, money is more sacred than the divine's will. I am not for getting interest on money. From Sri Aurobindo. Money is the visible sign of a universal force. And this force, in its manifestation on earth, works on the vital and physical planes, and is indispensable to the fullness of the outer life. In its origin and its true action, it belongs to the divine. But like other powers of the divine, it is delegated here, and in the ignorance of the lower nature, can be usurped for the uses of the ego or held by asuric influences and perverted to their purpose. This is indeed one of the three forces, power, wealth, sex, that have the strongest attraction for the human ego and the asura, and are most generally misheld and misused by those who retain them. For this reason, most spiritual disciplines proclaim poverty and bareness of life as the only spiritual condition. But this is an error. It leaves the power in the hands of the hostile forces. To reconquer it for the divine to whom it belongs and use it divinely for the divine life is the supramental way for the sadhaka. From Sri Aurobindo's book, The Mother. Question: how can one know if one's way of using money is in accordance with the divine will? Sri Aurobindo: one must first know what the divine will is. But there is a surer way, to surrender money for the divine work, if one is not sure oneself. Divinely means at the service of the divine. It means not to use money for one's own satisfaction, but to place it at the divine service. When you are rich and have a lot of money to spend, generally you spend it on things you find pleasant, and you become habituated to these things, attached to these things. And if one day the money is gone, you miss it. You are unhappy. You are miserable and feel all lost because you no longer have what you are in the habit of having. It is a bondage, a weak attachment. He who is quite detached, when he lives in the midst of these things, it is well with him. When these things are gone, it is well also. He is totally indifferent to both. That is the right attitude. When it is there, he uses it. When it is not, he does without it. And for his inner consciousness, this makes no difference. That surprises you, but it is like that. Question: if one has the power to acquire a lot of money, does this mean that one has a certain control over terrestrial forces? Sri Aurobindo: this depends upon how one acquires it. If you get it by foul ways, that does not mean that you have a control. But if someone, scrupulously doing his duty, sees that money comes to him, it is evidently because he exercises a control over these forces. There are people who have the power of attracting money, and they haven't the least need to practice dishonesty to get it. Others, even to get a few pennies, must make all sorts of contrivances, more or less clean. So one cannot say, We see a rich man and think he must be exercising a control over the forces of money. No, not necessarily. But if a man remains perfectly honest and does what he thinks is his duty, without caring to acquire money, and yet money comes to him, evidently he has a certain affinity with those forces. Namaste.